Staying with security matters, some disturbing news on rising insecurity in the country. Residents of Mombasa, Kilifi, Siaya and Baringo counties are living in fear following recent rampant cases of attacks by criminal gangs.
Friday, December 30th, 2016. Young men were seen swinging machetes and strolling through the darkness in the streets of Majengo in Mombasa. As they walked, they shouted chilling warnings into the camera, promising their rivals that before the night ended, Majengo would feel them. Their voices echoed through the narrow streets and their machetes flashed under dim lights. And at the center of this operation was a skinny young man feared across Old Town Mombasa. His name was Mohammed Mahseen Azwan, better known as Dogo Presso. That night, his TMK gang had crossed deep into Majengo, hunting for members of the feared Floropa gang, their bitter rivals in a violent turf war that had already left Mombasa on edge. And they were recording everything. In one chilling video, the young men are walking, then suddenly they corner an innocent young man wearing a red t-shirt. He is overpowered, robbed, and brutally hacked as the gang films the attack. Later, the same video would appear online, allegedly posted by Dogo Presso himself. By then, fear had already spread across Old Town and Majengo because of how this machete gang had terrorized people and even threatened others into hiding. The TMK gang had become known for moving in groups, terrorizing neighborhoods, issuing threats online, and openly displaying their weapons on social media without fear of police. But what shocked investigators most is even with them being wanted criminals, their threats, the gang wars, and the videos all remained very public. And just a few months later after this incident, the same gang would strike again on April 1st, 2017, and this time in broad daylight. CCTV cameras captured 3 young men armed with pangas storming an MPESA shop in Old Town before escaping with more than 100,000 shillings in cash and airtime worth thousands of shillings. One is even seen carrying stolen items from the shop, and the other carefully hiding his panga in his trousers, matching the operations of the same TMK gang led by Dogo Presso. At this point, his face had been placed at the top of the list of Mombasa's most wanted gangsters. But who was he, really? How did a young man who once spent his days swimming in the Indian Ocean and playing football on the beaches of Old Town become one of the most feared gang leaders in Mombasa? And how did a group of childhood friends transform into a violent gang whose machete attacks would leave an entire neighborhood living in fear? Welcome. This is Dark Hour Docs. Long before police placed his face on wanted posters across Mombasa, before panga attacks, gang wars, and violent robberies, Mohammed Mahseen Azwan was simply another boy growing up inside the narrow streets of Old Town. Born in 1999 and raised in Kibokoni, Dogo Presso spent most of his childhood surrounded by the culture, beauty, and tourism that are crucial to Mombasa. Despite Mombasa's image as a tourist paradise, life for many young men growing up inside Old Town looked very different behind the postcards and tourist photos. In the narrow streets of Kibokoni and Majengo, unemployment was high, opportunities were scarce, and tensions between neighborhoods were becoming increasingly violent. As a teenager, Dogo Presso loved swimming in the Indian Ocean and playing beach football with his closest friends. Among them were names that would later become feared across Mombasa: Bobocha, Shafir, and Ameto. At the time, they were simply boys from the same neighborhood spending their days together along the coast. But as they grew older, their lifestyles slowly began changing. Many of the young men started spending long hours at the beach, smoking bong, and abusing rohypnol, the powerful sedative commonly known on the streets as roho or bugizi. Over time, the drug became heavily associated with the growing gang culture around Old Town. Users would place the blue tablets beneath their tongues like sweets, leaving behind a visible blue stain. And during these drug-fueled gatherings, conversations would increasingly turn toward rival gangs, territory, revenge, and survival. Many of the young men were unemployed, and some feared moving freely into rival neighborhoods, with more and more obsession growing over defending their territory. Slowly, the football group transformed into something much darker. By early 2016, they formally created TMK, also known as Temeke Wanaume. At just 21 years old, Mohammed Mahseen Azwan had seamlessly graduated from a swimmer to a gang leader. He chose his closest friends, Bobocha, Shafir, and Ameto, as gang leaders just below him. According to Dogo Presso, the gang originally existed to protect Old Town from rival groups operating in Majengo.
Na sisi tuko tayari, kilikuwa si wabaya tusikilikuja leo kujisaliti.
At first, some residents even viewed them like informal vigilantes, but that image would not last long. As the group became more violent, TMK members began openly carrying machetes and posting photos of themselves online armed with pankas. Unlike many Nairobi gangs associated with guns, TMK built its reputation around blades, long machetes, public threats, and group attacks. Dogo Presso himself appeared increasingly fearless online, with videos showing him posing with weapons without hiding his face. At one point, he even created a gang logo featuring an axe, a symbol of the violent image TMK wanted attached to its name. And soon, another gang began responding. A rival group from Majengo known as Floropa had become a rival to TMK. Just like TMK, Floropa gang was made up of young men who had also grown up together before drifting into crime and drug abuse. And before long, this rivalry would spread online, with threats being posted on Facebook alongside evidence of attacks and warnings to rivals not to visit their hood. And behind the screens, tensions were building fast. Because soon, the online insults would turn into real bloodshed. On August 12, 2016, violence between the two gangs escalated dramatically. During a wedding in Old Town, a Floropa gang member known as Wesso was hacked to death by unknown attackers. Although investigators never immediately confirmed who carried out the killing, Floropa gang members quickly blamed TMK, and in the streets of Mombasa, that accusation alone was enough to start a war. At the time, violent gang incidents during weddings had already become common across parts of Old Town and Majengo. The situation became so serious that only days after Wesso's death, Mombasa police banned night weddings in an attempt to control the growing insecurity. But by then, the rivalry had already exploded. Floropa members allegedly carried out retaliatory attacks in response to Wesso's killing, and Dogo Presso responded publicly. Through WhatsApp messages and Facebook posts, he openly threatened Floropa members and their then leader, Ropa. He even posted threats online for all to see and demanded Ropa's head on Facebook, warning them that Majengo would feel their wrath. In others, he claimed he wanted their heads. The threats shocked residents because they were not hidden, and the more the pressure mounted, the more fearless Dogo Presso appeared to become. At one point, peace efforts from some rival members with TMK were reportedly dismissed and mocked online. In one post, a gang member said he had no personal beef with Dogo Presso and that he was ready to walk away from Ropa entirely if it meant ending the bloodshed. For the police, the feud was quickly spiraling out of control, and something had to be done. Soon after, authorities arrested 4 key members of TMK, including Bobocha, Ameto, Ismail, and Swale. During the operation, they recovered machetes, bang, and a fake pistol. But despite the arrests, the violence only escalated further. On 1 December 2016, just 2 days after his friends were arrested, Dogo Presso posted his final threat to his rivals and threatened them in their own territory. He even teased Floropa members to come to Old Town and face them. What followed soon after is that during the December 2016 festive season, Dogo Presso led TMK members deep into Majengo searching for Floropa rivals. The gang filmed themselves marching through the streets carrying machetes at night. But instead of finding rival gang members, they came across an innocent young man wearing a red t-shirt. The man was cornered, robbed, and brutally attacked as gang members recorded the incident. Later, the disturbing footage allegedly appeared online, the boy fighting for his life. This marked a critical turning point for investigators, as the violence was no longer happening secretly. It was being filmed, celebrated, and uploaded publicly as if streets had become a lawless battlefield. Despite all this, Dogo Presso continued posting threats online, with a February 2017 post warning that attacks against Floropa would continue. This was later followed by the April 1, 2017 attack on an MPESA shop in Old Town, where they stole 100,000 shillings in cash and airtime vouchers. This footage was crucial for investigators, who were able to link the perpetrators with the TMK gang and place them under Mombasa's most wanted gang members list. And at the very top of that list was none other than Dogo Presso. By mid-2017, pressure on TMK was intensifying from every direction. Police operations had increased, and residents were reporting gang activity more frequently. Also, the faces from the wanted posters were now being recognized in public. Then, on June 25, 2017, one of TMK's most feared members made a fatal mistake. Bobocha, already wanted by police, attacked a man in Marobini, stabbing him before stealing his phone. But this time, residents recognized him immediately, and within moments, an angry crowd surrounded him. Long before police could intervene, the mob turned violent, and Bobocha was beaten to death in the streets. For many residents living under fear of gang attacks, the killing was seen as justifiable against the terror TMK had brought into their neighborhoods. That same night, police launched raids targeting suspected gang hideouts in Mombasa and recovered several crude weapons. However, the death of Bobocha hit TMK hard, as he was one of the gang's most visible and feared members. And suddenly, the group that once moved confidently through Old Town carrying machetes was now under enormous pressure. Since Dogo Presso knew that police were now closing in, he eventually surrendered alongside others, accompanied by civil rights activists and then MPESA MP Abdul Swamad Nasir. During the surrender, Dogo Presso pleaded their innocence and described the incident at the wedding.
Kwa sababu alimdunga ndugu yangu, kazani yangu, na sisi wakati huko Afrika tulislimishwa, au sio? Na sisi tulikwenda kwa sababu harusi ya ndugu yetu na walimdunga, na sisi alikuwa tujakwenda kwa ubaya, tulikwenda kujidefense. Na sisi tuko tayari, kilikuwa si ubaya, tusikilikuja leo kujisaliti.
At this point, it seemed like violence might finally end, but the calm did not last long. On July 20th, 2017, Dogo Presso was arrested once again following fresh complaints from residents. He was later released on a 15,000 shilling cash bail as investigations continued. But by 2019, a surprising new chapter emerged for the young man. Dogo Presso traveled to Bahrain together with 4 former TMK members after claiming they had abandoned crime and reformed from their violent past. The group then secured jobs in Bahrain with a private security company known as Security Solutions. For the first time in years, it appeared some former gang members were trying to leave the streets behind. But as fate would have it, the calm would not last. Just 3 months later, in October 2019, Dogo Presso and the others were arrested in Bahrain after allegedly attacking a fellow Kenyan at their hostel. The incident led to their immediate deportation back to Kenya, ending their so-called journey of reformed criminals. And unfortunately, after returning to Mombasa, Dogo Presso remained deeply connected to the long-running rivalry between gangs from Old Town and Majengo. Tensions within the streets had never fully disappeared, and old scores remained unsettled. Unfortunately, in early 2020, Dogo Presso would end up dead, killed in a retaliatory attack linked to the same cycle of gang violence. He was stabbed and hacked to death by rival gang members, with his death being viewed as part of an ongoing revenge chain following the death of Ropa. In the end, the same violence that had once built his name in the streets of Mombasa would eventually consume him too. And years later, the story of TMK still remains one of the most disturbing examples of how quickly groups of ordinary young men can descend into organized violence, especially in communities already struggling with drugs, unemployment, fear, and neglect. And in the narrow streets of Old Town Mombasa, many people still remember the name, Dogo Presso. This has been Dark Hour Docs. Thanks for watching.